Good evening. My name is Edward Oberholtzer. I'm the resident priest and guiding teacher here at the Joseph Priestley Zen Sangha in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. We're part of Empty Moon Zen. The leaves here are just beginning to take color, though peak foliage isn't for some time yet. Still, I'm reminded of Massachusetts in the fall, picking apples, eating apple cider donuts, traveling out to Western Mass, following the red, the orange, and yellow leaves. It may be the wrong season to remember this, and perhaps the proximity to Halloween will excuse me, but I'm reminded that the Connecticut River Valley was the location of that most famous of American sermons, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, preached by Jonathan Edwards in July of 1741. They really knew how to name sermons in those days. Sinners in the hands of an angry God, indeed. There is, for a Buddhist, a certain irony in thinking that this sermon was seen as the start of the First Great Awakening. Edwards led his congregation through the torments of hell, overseen by a vengeful God whose wrath makes you wonder what childhood sermons he was working through on those poor, pathetic creatures he had consigned, and on those he was going to consign to eternal damnation. The fiendish pleasures in those torments seems more appropriate in a demon and not in a loving God, or in, for that matter, an indifferent one. Edwards went on at great length, and here I do mean length. They are now the objects of that very same anger and wrath of God that is expressed in the torments of hell. And the reason why they don't go down to hell at every moment is not because God, in whose power they are, is not then very angry with them, as angry as he is with many of those miserable creatures that he is now tormenting in hell, and do there feel and bear the fierceness of his wrath. Yea, God is a great deal more angry with great numbers that are now on earth, yea, doubtless with many that are in this congregation, that it may be are at ease and quiet than he is with many of those that are now in the flames of hell. Yeah, even the good are at risk. How dreadful, he goes on, how dreadful is the state of those that are daily and hourly in danger of this great wrath and infinite misery. But this is the dismal case of every soul in this congregation that has not been born again, however moral and strict, sober and religious they may otherwise be. No, Edward's God is enraged, and woe to anyone who stands in the path of his rage. And let's not consider that this is only the view of Protestants. No. James Joyce saw fit to put much the same language in the mouth of an Irish Catholic priest in the early 20th century. Now let us try for a moment to realize as far as we can the nature of that abode of the damned which the justice of an offended God has called into existence for the eternal punishment of sinners. Hell is a strait and dark and foul-smelling prison, an abode of demons and lost souls, filled with fire and smoke. There, by the reason of the great numbers of the damned, the prisoners are heaped together in their awful prison, the walls of which are said to be 4,000 miles thick. And the damned are so utterly bound and helpless that, as a blessed saint, St. Anselm, writes in his book of the Similitudes, they are not even able to remove the eye of a worm, from the eye, a worm that gnaws it. And here I thought St. Anselm concerned himself solely with the proof of the existence of this obviously offended God. But lest we find ourselves, as Buddhists, feeling smug about our own views of the afterlife, consider that Basui himself consigned any drinker to hell. And think of the Southeastern Asian phenomena of the Hell Gardens, those amusement parks which depict in graphic detail the torments of those damned by their accumulated bad karma to spend eons in the hell realms, facing elaborate and graphic tortures, shown in those parks in sometimes animated dioramas for the amusement and edification of the masses. But note here that I said eons. The God of Jonathan Edwards, the God of that unnamed Catholic prelate, seems to rub his hands in glee at the thought of an eternity of torment for sinners who may not even be aware of their transgressions. But the most fundamental of Buddhists sees a way out. No one is consigned to hell forever. Rebirth applies to the bad as well as the good. That demonic figure standing astride the seven levels of the inferno, that formerly privileged angel, Lucifer, the Prince of Light, cast out of heaven for the sin of pride, for the failure to obey, that figure in Buddhism, the Lord of the Hell Realms, is not there to torment, but to reform, to see that the damned have a chance at a better rebirth. Like all bodhisattvas, Kshiktagarbha has made a vow to not taste the fruit of his own enlightenment until all beings have. He has specifically vowed not to attain Buddhahood until all the hells are empty. Now, not all Christians follow the footsteps of Jonathan Edwards, or, for that matter, Pat Robertson. Interestingly enough, that Christian writer, C.S. Lewis, believed that there was a hell, but that it was empty. As Bajang famously pointed out to the fox spirit, even a fully enlightened being is subject to the law of cause and effect. Even the Buddha would reap what he had sowed, as he did in an earlier life, in a story from the Upaya Kaushala Sutta. Long ago, the Buddha was the captain of a trading vessel sailing home from a successful voyage, together with 500 merchants and all of their profits. One of the merchants intended to kill all the others in their sleep and seize those profits for himself. The plan was revealed to the Buddha in his sleep, and he was left to ponder what to do about this. He could simply let events unfold, but the end result would be not simply that 500 merchants would die, but that the murderer would spend thousands of eons in hell for his crime, a sentence he was not able to survive. But should the Buddha tell the merchants they themselves would kill the potential murderer, and then themselves spend countless eons in hell? The Buddha saw only one way to resolve this. He took a spear and killed the passenger himself, knowing that those countless eons in hell awaited for him, knowing that he could endure the torments of hell while the others could not. Now, in fairness to Christianity, on that Saturday before the resurrection, it is said that Jesus, in the harrowing of hell, descended to those hell realms to defeat evil and release its victims, though, granted, not to bear their torments in their place. I feel here a certain missed opportunity in Christianity. The word in the Gospels that we translate as sin, that entrance ticket to those ghastly torments of hell, was hamartano, a word that, in classical Greek, originally meant to fall short of the target in archery. And so sin might be seen not as the embodiment of some living, breathing evil, but as a failure to live up to an intent. Now, we in Buddhism speak of the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance, which, it seems to me, has an emphasis on ignorance as the ground of the other two. And what is ignorance if not a falling short, a failing that can be remedied by opening our eyes to the true nature of reality, just as the archer can, through practice, improve his aim? And where better to work this out than here in our own lives? Here is where we find both heaven and hell. Hakuin Zenji was once visited by a samurai warrior. "I want to know about heaven and hell," said the samurai. "Do they really exist?" he asked Hakuin. Hakuin looked at the soldier and asked, "Who are you?" "I am a samurai," announced the warrior. "What makes you think you can understand such things? You look more like a beggar than a samurai. Don't waste my time with your foolishness," and waved his hand to drive the samurai away. The enraged samurai drew his sword, raising it over his head to strike, when Hakuin calmly said, "This is hell." The soldier was taken aback. His face softened. He put away his sword and bowed before the Zen priest. "And this is heaven," Hakuin said, just as calmly. We don't need the gothic, hellish horrors of Jonathan Edwards, James Joyce Priest, or even our contemporary Pat Robertson. No, we can make our own hell, right here, right now. And at the same time, heaven waits for us here, in this very moment. We are the Bodhisattva Kshitigarbha, and we have the power within us to see to it that hell exists, but that it's empty. Thank you.